Okay, with regard to the effects of everything we were simply describing in the other video, with regard to the effect it's having on our planet, the blue planet we live on, most of it's a nice blue planet, and it's dying. Okay, but in what way? What specific way? Say, okay, fine. So the gigantic agro sector is doing all this. Okay, here's something that's actually not mentioned. I mean, it really isn't mentioned, partly because none of this is mentioned. So anything that none of it's mentioned anyway. But here's something that's definitely not mentioned, and it's crucial to understanding what kind of mentality the people who design this whole operation have, and what happens when you're doing economic science on blackboards rather than worrying or being interested in the physical economy itself. What happens is this. Part of this Chicago school and these PhDs in economics is when you're doing it as a science, you do take into account the fact that there will be, that how do you sort of wage economic sort of war on any attempt like there are when you're going to destroy the economy of a country, and also you're going to do things here that just let the essentially abandon the physical economy and let it just sort of rot, like the devastation of like a place like Detroit used to be manufacturing. Okay, but how does it relate to the planet and what they're doing? This is it, okay? When they're designing these theories that are going to be, they know a couple things. One, they know that this agro business, one of the ways in which it operates, because it can make the most profits, but it also is just how a formation like that thinks. It actually sort of operates in a way that some of it's called they're seeing like a state. They're not really doing it's not really it's not a business. It has the mentality of the sort of Soviet system. It's a science what they're doing. Okay, so part of it is this: the major force. I mean, remember they do. There's millions of farmers all over Mexico and Latin America, but this is the natural form of farming. No matter how big it is. I mean, it's farmers doing farming, growing things, raising livestock. I mean, it's the way that's always it's as those kind of activities have always been. These people who are designing, sort of things on blackboards and working closely with the sector that wants to penetrate into markets and do these things, they know who the enemy of this is. That is, they're going to get a backlash. You reorganize capitalism in a way that, and on top of it, you're doing a number of things and not just put millions of people into starvation, but because of, we mentioned in the other one, the fact that they've developed something called industrial agriculture that is using so much water to do what they're doing in the way they grow their crops, because they're growing it on a mass scale and they're growing one type of crop. It's incredibly water intensive, okay? So it's wasting an incredible amount of water. The sort of livestock aspect of it, you know, the waste produced by that, they're ends up just it pollutes all the water that's there, and they're using water, incredible amounts of water that are causing a water shortage. Okay, this kind of thing, there's going to be, some kind of backlash, and they foresee that, and they're looking at it sort of scientifically. So where would the backlash come from? Well, the truth of the matter is that farmers in a place like millions of farmers, I mean, they're in the same. They're in the same position as, say, the workers that used to be at high-paying jobs in all our factories here that sort of no longer exist. One is, factory workers in a factory, and then over there it's farmers growing crops, but it's some kind of workers because of this type of this agro thing, this giant capital formation, be causing so much harm to the planet and human beings everywhere it goes, and it's transnational, so it wants to get into as many economies as possible. Oh, they know full well that there is such a thing as the global left. That is, when the interests of millions of farmers is being harmed, and so too are people who are in the working class and working in factories and are in unions here. Remember, they begin really early threatening unions if they ask for higher wages to do anything. They're already building factories in Mexico now that they got access to their market, and there's no limits on how much investment. So they're building factories and threatening unions the whole time. But what's not entirely understood about the function of unions in this country and any kind of organization, or farmers were certainly in the, it's not called a union, but they're sort of, but they're farmers and they're in the millions. Okay, that these kind of things, particularly unions, would be a major force in trying to stop this. That's unions aren't just there to get like wages up. If someone is doing something that's going to shift production to a place where they can pay people very little, and they're going to flood in all this stuff, well, American workers are all going to lose their jobs. Okay, but on time, and just as farmers across the border are all going to starve. But what unions would be certainly able to do once they begin doing things that are like polluting all the water and soil in Mexico, and using up water so fast that water shortage is not only taking place there, we're experiencing a water shortage. Unions would be a force to one keep they want to keep work here like factories and not have it shifted to a place across the border. But also, I mean, they can stand up to unions, can working with farmers and other unions, and they're all experiencing the same thing. There's a global left that's gonna fight this. Okay, so one of the first sort of conditions of doing something like this is gonna harm the planet and workers and farmers is that they have to make sure that they sort of like destroy the unions, because the unions form that is, there is a global left. It's kind of an alliance of workers and farmers and anyone who's being wrecked by these new economic attacks. So it's sort of like one-sided class war. Well, the way they dealt with it is this. Yeah, they threatened any union that began protesting what they were going to do with these what they're calling trade agreements. But also, what they did is start gradually just shifting all. This is see, they're flooding in agro products that are going to put farmers into starvation. They're growing their crops in a way that's depleting the water, so that there are millions of people who don't have clean water to drink in Mexico. Okay, when all that's going on, you have to do something to make sure you can neutralize the entire sort of global left who would stand up to it. Well, in Latin America, in Mexico, what they can do is, yeah, they build military bases and have the CIA work with paramilitaries to, rout out and threaten anyone who would stand up to this kind of an economic attack. What they do here is, first, any union's attempt to even stop the shift of production is just met with the fact that they are going to gradually, that this agribusiness is going to do its thing, but all the sort of capitalists that are doing, building things in factories, the fact is they're going to shift them over to Mexico, but then the real move that these formulas is allowing for is they're basically becoming uninterested in the physical economy. That's the way in which they decided to wreck the thing. So all the other sort of capitalist class simply realizes something new is going on, and they're going to just simply go in. The entire sort of a structure of capitalism will be directed as to prejudice financial capital. That's when you get this explosion of speculative capital and block currency trading and all kinds of new ways of making. Why are they doing all this? So where they just figure it out? Well, they figured it out on blackboards, all the different ways you can sort of make profits in a way that you don't even have to bother anymore with the physical economy. That's just they sort of forgive. We've designed a number of mechanisms by which we can just the capitalist class can just make its profits in this kind of virtual world that is and made way for, because, as we said, part of the new economic theories involves removing limits on how quickly and that you can move gigantic amounts of capital in and out of countries. Okay, that's new. That's brand new. The block on that were called capital controls. It was taken very seriously. It was put in place after World War II as part of a major agreement. I mean, it was the idea if people were able to move gigantic amounts of money in and out of different countries, if they could do that, I mean, they'd be making a fortune, but it would be it would be spinning above the economy, and it would cause havoc in all the other economies. But so what they do is they just abandon the physical economy and go into all these new forms of finance capital. Okay, just new ways that we didn't, unfamiliar to us, block currency trading, these kind of things. Okay, but with the physical economy just abandoned, that they're not building factories here anymore to the extent that they need them. They build one in Mexico. They just take off into this finance sector. The only thing that remains in the physical economy is this, like, these new kind of capital formations are working with the state to just flood products into other countries. The entire sort of our manufacturing, our infrastructure, all those physical elements of the economy, that the capitalist class abandoned it. They're in this virtual space, and the only capital formation that's really doing anything is this state subsidized thing that's not only starving farmers, but it's using up, like, I think they use 80% of the water that's being wasted to do what they call industrial agriculture. It's a mass scale agricultural thing. The amount of water they're using has very rapidly created a water shortage crisis that no one knows the solution to, because water isn't really something that we thought would be in short supply, and now it is everywhere.